Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
Jumping over to the Quickfire Questions, what advice would you give to a brand new recruiter that's just starting off in the industry?
Well, keep in mind that brand new to me means three different levels. There are three different types of people. If you are talking about what you have described, brand new, starting off in the industry, the best thing, honestly, is to learn what your manager is teaching you. Keep in mind that when I got into this business, I had had 10 years of serious corporate or direct selling and had been to huge numbers of corporate training programs with the best type of classical sales training available. I got into this business and I was a genuinely sophisticated, well-educated, top-level salesman. And what did I do? I saluted and I learned what my managers told me. I mean, that's exactly what you do. We've all seen people, I think, that are brand new, and by gosh, from the day they get into this business, they immediately try to figure, no, here's how it should be done. No, let's try this. I didn't do any of that, and you shouldn't do any of that if you're brand new. You should genuinely learn what your manager teaches you. And then after you have got some knowledge of the industry, then you can start fooling around. The second portion of this business that people ought to pay attention to is at 6 months. And it is a key area. At 6 months, you've got some knowledge of the business, which you obviously don't have the day you started. You don't really know what this business is about. The first step is to figure out if you're right for the business. Francis Bacon had a comment that went, "They are happy men whose natures sort with their vocation." Well, that's the truth. This business is not right for everybody. I have a friend who's a dentist. I could learn to be a dentist, and I could learn to be a good dentist, but would my nature sort with my vocation? No, right? And he wouldn't be very good at this business. He could learn it, I could teach it, but he surely would not be happy. The first step after 6 months is to say, okay, is this the kind of thing that I really do want to be doing? I will get better, I will earn more money, but the actual business itself, does it sort with my vocation? At 6 months, however, you can also go back and think about how you were taught. Now, I'm not referring to what was taught, but how was taught. An easy example was role-playing used as part of your beginning training program? And the role-playing should be done on the telephone. That doesn't mean, Bill, you try to recruit me. It means picking up the phone, calling, trying to recruit someone. If it's not, there are gaps. Look, there are excellent people that do a lot of good business in this industry. There are, truthfully, a lot of good managers in this industry. But when I first started, and I'm referring to started training, the hypothesis was it couldn't be done because every manager thought he was the best. And maybe he was. But if you say, okay, are you the best trainer? Most people, most managers probably do realize that they may not be, because they're different skill sets, working a desk, being a manager, training new people, all different things. So if role-playing is not done, a 6-month person ought to go and say, listen, I'm not recruiting as well as I should. Can we do some role-playing? How about if I pick up the phone and give you a call and try to recruit you, and then you tell me what I did? And most managers will look at that. Are you recording your calls and listening to it? At 6 months, truthfully, you don't really have the skill level to be able to look at this and say, I could do better here and there. You might get lucky, but have your manager sit in on a call or record a call and then ask your manager to critique it. This is at 6 months. If your nature sorts with your vocation, then you ought to go back and think about how is this material being taught and how can my manager help me to improve? The third step, which is an utterly critical one, is at 2 years. Something I did, which was enormously impactful. The problem is at 2 years, people start to think they know it all. They do. One of the most interesting things I ever did was when I was doing research on a product for managers that became turbulent times, a manager's guide to navigating difficult markets. It was how to get through a difficult market from a manager's perspective. And I knew some things. I had been through some recessions, but that's an area where there are people that frankly knew more than I did. So what I did was whenever I'd be in a city, I would ask the person that I was working with or the head of the association, who's the person you know that has the most experience in this business? And I got answers. And then I would say, because it was a manager's program, is he a manager? Does he run a good operation? Would you want someone to go to work for him if it were your son or daughter? And I found 35 people that had minimally 35 years of experience in this business. And I sat down and talked with them. If I couldn't do that, I talked with them on the phone. I pulled out the manager's material that basically is of great assistance in helping people, managers, to get through a recession. I learned a lot of stuff. There's a line from Confucius that goes, "A single conversation with a wise man is worth a month's study of books." And I gained greatly. But one of the things I found from these people is they said that the average person in this industry stops learning at 2 years. And this was not just one person that told me this. It was a general statement that the average person in this industry stops learning at 2 years. That's because I think they've got it down. I was doing a program some years ago in Minnesota, and it went very, very well. It was a public speaking program. It was a top flight audience. I do well with excellent audiences. And afterwards, someone named Dennis Anderson, who was a legend in the Twin City area, ran a good operation, high personal producer, big firm, gave me a call, and he booked me for 2 different programs with his operation, one of them with the experience, one of them with the less experience. And he told me a story. He had been sitting next to someone during my presentation, and Dennis had taken lots and lots of notes. The guy next to him wasn't taking any notes at all. Afterwards, Dennis said, "Excuse me, I thought this was a good speaker. I took a great many notes. You didn't take any. May I ask why not?" And the fellow, who was somewhat younger, said, "No point to it. I know all this stuff." And Dennis said, $400,000 producer at the time when that was an awful lot. And he also ran an operation. He was vice president of the association, said, "That's kind of interesting. May I ask how long you've been in this business?" And the fellow said, "Well, 2 years, but I know all this stuff." Well, Dennis had access to the attendance list, and he called up the owner of the firm and he said, "I spoke to this fellow. How's he doing?" Well, the answer is not very well. Is he improving? No, he really isn't. Now that's 2 years. And it's pretty clear he quit learning. Now, look, this is a great business. Somebody with marginal skills, if this guy had stayed in the business, I don't know if he did, he could have made his calls and he might pick up a client here and he might pick up a client there, and he would be recruiting people. So he'd slowly be building a database. He could yield better production with his marginal skills. But he probably wouldn't have been too happy about it. And believe me, that's the kind of guy that come the next recession, he ain't going to be here anymore because he doesn't have the skills he needs to do well. At 2 years is a critical time, and somebody better make it clear to themselves as to whether I need to improve and continue to improve, or else I'm just going to be pretty well marginal forever.
Well, I think that really goes into like something else, is like the decision for you to learn versus the decision for you being told you need to learn? Because looking back on my career, we'll look at that 2-year mark of mine. And, I, at that little world of mine that I was at my 2-year mark, I felt like I knew it all. But that was also my little world, and I knew nothing outside of that. It wasn't until I got around like other producers and other companies, and it really just like opened myself up. I realized it's a whole big world out there. So that really
And
just goes.
Yeah, even people, look, you started with a good sized firm, didn't you?
Oh, it's gigantic, worth billions.
You know, people think of trainers as though to be a trainer for a big firm is a positive. Or even if you have a good manager, sometimes they think of that as a positive, and it certainly is. But understand what people with your firm do. The people that were involved in training, they brought in people, they got them developed to the point of adequacy. And then they went to a new bunch of people and they got them developed to the point of adequacy. And then they went to a new bunch of people. And those people that had been developed, maybe if they were right for the business, to the point of adequacy, they were left on their own. And maybe some of them did well because they were brilliant and had great talent. That you can't deny that. It's there, but it is not duplicatable. And maybe others just stayed there and did a little better and a little better, and maybe others dropped out of the business. The business lends itself towards advanced level selling skills. But people don't have those advanced level selling skills because they were never trained in that area. Our business progressed just as I'm talking about. Look, there it goes, and all the people that think they want to become trainers knows is here's what works for me, or here's what worked for someone else, or I spoke with someone, he says it works for him. There are really, think of the comparison. There are thousands of books on sales. Right? It could be insurance sales, it could be thousands. How about this industry? 4. That's it. 4. I mean, there have been others. Confessions of a Corporate Headhunter came out 60 years ago, and it was, here's some of the confessions of a corporate headhunter. But this simply indicates the difference in the progress in professional selling and the progress in developing people in this industry. Now, you don't have to worry about getting all the professional selling stuff, because the truth is, it's all put together for you. There's me.
Well, and that kind of like goes into like the next question I always ask is like, for people that have been in the business, maybe burnt out, or, finally hitting the place where they want to grow, what is the thing that they need to do to get ahead?
There are 2 things. All right. Now, keep in mind, several of them we've discussed, recording calls, okay, all this. All right. But there are 2 things. The first thing you need to do, honestly, is to get involved in reading books or audios and concentrating. And I mean really concentrating. Francis Bacon had a comment that some books are to be tasted, some to be swallowed, and some few to be chewed and digested. I'm always taken aback by people that say, I've read your books. Well, great. Or even worse, I've read your book, singular, as though there's only one. I mean, reading is to the mind as exercise is to the body. Now think about that analogy. I mean, think of your own background. Reading is to the mind as exercise is to the body. You've got to get involved in seriously reading and contemplating and building in. And what I've always done in books that I read, underlining, highlighting, marking up, reviewing. Tom Alacio, who set you up, or set me up with this interview and introduced me to you, reads the books that I have assiduously, and he's a great long-term producer. The other thing, which is even more significant, after really immersing yourself in the material, there's something else, and it's rather literary. Walk through the mist. Walk through the mist. Now, I'll explain what that means. There was a 17th century Japanese poet named Basho that said, if you walk through the mist, you will get wet. And the significance of this is, if you continually expose yourself to high quality, serious material, it will sink in. In the short term, you immerse yourself, but after you immerse yourself and study, you walk through the mist. I do this myself. Look, I've written, depending on how you count it, 6 books, 6 300+ page books. I know how to do this stuff. But before I launch myself into any book, I've got an extensive library or portion of the library on the craft of writing, but I pull out 3 books. I pull out Strunk and E.B. White's The Elements of Style. I pull out Fowler's Modern English Usage. And I pull out a book by a fellow named William Zinsser, basically on writing nonfiction stuff, which is called On Writing Well. I've got several copies of each one of these books because I don't want to be affected by my highlighting and underlining in the previous one. And I read these 3 books before I launch myself into a new book. And it is not as though halfway through I go back and I go, what do Strunk and White say about this paragraph? I don't do that. But I walk through the mist. And if I just read books about writing cleanly and properly and truly and well, it kind of sinks into me. And what comes out is I get wet. I've walked through the mist. Those 4 books that I reference, there are 120 chapters, cumulatively, probably a few more, 120 chapters. Thus, if you figure, gosh, if you look at it and figure, okay, well, 120 chapters, if you read 1 chapter a day, single chapter a day before work, it's 6 months by the time you get to the end of it. You're walking through the mist. Real recruiting audio is 15-minute modules. Anybody that commutes to work or anybody that wants to get a good solid start in the morning, a 15-minute module, if you figure 20 working days per month, it's 2 months worth. Larry Noble, wonderful speaker, has got an audio series consisting of 24 30-minute modules. You walk through the mist, and an experienced person will start to absorb and pick up and use things automatically after he's gone through this to start with.
Well, this actually perfectly goes into my next question. What book has had a personal impact on your own career?
Well, pretty clearly, I read a great deal.
Which is why I was asking.
My career actually is 3 different parts. So there are basically 3 different, well, probably more than that, but 3 different books. One of them is Frank Bettger, which is Betgar, How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. It is a classic book. And Dale Carnegie, no mean public speaker and trainer himself, said Bettger was the best sales trainer he'd ever seen. If you want an interesting story, by the way, Frank Bettger was 3rd baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals baseball team. And all of a sudden, on a hot July day, he made a throw to first base and his arm went away. I mean, and it never came back. And what does an unemployed 3rd baseman do? He got into sales, and in his case, insurance sales. And basically, How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling is a classic, absolutely appropriate today, very well motivated. The second book, Peter Drucker's book, The Effective Executive. People think of me as the quintessential advanced level sales trainer, and I am. But I built my own organization from 1 person to ultimately 6 offices, 45 recruiters. I conduct training programs for managers and public speaking programs for managers. The Effective Executive, which has real relevance to an individual. Keep in mind it is executive. Drucker's written a huge number of books on management, but it's an excellent book and highly recommended. And finally, I've probably read Thomas Stroh's. I've read all of Thomas Stroh's books, but Training and Developing the Professional Salesman has had a significant effect. You know, you need to learn different skill sets. And I can't honestly say that Frank Betcher's book was useful in terms of training and developing the professional salesman, or training and developing the professional salesman useful in terms of managing. I mean, these are three different skill sets, and I've learned them all, and those are probably the three books that had the greatest impact of me from a professional standpoint.
Phenomenal. Well, that kind of goes into my next question. You know, you've talked about the arches in your own career. You know, you've had multiple recruiting offices and tons of recruiters working for you. Plus, you went on this entire training journey within the recruitment space with trying to help up-level the entire community. What do you think has been a major part of your own personal success?
Well, let me slightly duck the question, because I will answer the question, but you don't find too many successful people that say I'm successful. I don't think of myself that way. I think of myself as making progress, right? and I am making progress. I suppose the answer to it, however, to the degree I've got along, is, for me, there is no finish line. When I achieve one goal, I start another one. The other side of it is I like learning new things. I started off, keep in mind, as a kid, with a desire to be the world's greatest salesman. I won't claim that. But there is an excellent book called The Greatest Sales Stories Ever Told by the World's Greatest Salesman, by the best sales author of our generation, Robert Shook, and prominently featured in The Greatest Sales Stories Ever Told by the World's Greatest Salesman is Steve Finkel with a particular subject. There's also, by the way, an excellent story in there under the subject line of The Blind Dentist. It's a great book. And that particular book, purely about it's not about our industry, but that subject is, there was a dentist that went blind, got into our industry. And when you read that chapter, you almost feel a little bit embarrassed, because you go, by golly, I've got my flaws, but I see all right. And in any case, I like learning to sell. Then I got into this business, and it was complex, and it was challenging, and it was interesting, and I learned it. And then I had to learn to train, and I had to learn to be a public speaker. A public speaker is a whole different skill set than training. And then I had to learn to be a video producer. Believe me, I've produced 3 different video products. I recommend them all, but there is a learning curve to being a video producer, and audios and writing books. Good golly, who knows how to write a book? But the truth is, I learned how to do it and got better at it. So I would say there's no finish line, and I don't mind being in a position of not knowing what the heck I'm doing. I mean, if you, Benjamin, sat down to write a book right now, you wouldn't know what the heck you were doing. Well, I didn't know what I was doing either, but that's okay. I don't mind that. If someone else can learn it and do it and accomplish it, I can do it. And so can you.
Well, that's if you want a good laugh, that's actually one of my goals this year, is actually taking some of these stories from the Elite Recruiter podcast and turning it actually into a book. So learning how to do that right now.
It's a mess. Don't try.
Well, and one of my favorite questions I always like to wrap up the conversation with is, everything that you know now, everything that you've done, the ups and downs that you've had in this industry, the people that you've met, like there's a whole gamut of like information that and you've gone through. But if you had the chance to get a cup of coffee with yourself, the first week that you started your recruiting career, what would you tell yourself?
Gee, I would say, son, buy Amazon at $8 a share. And and if you could make it to 2022, there's a horse called Rich Strike that will win the Kentucky Derby at 80-1. So I suppose, look, for people like you and I, people that either run our own business or alternatively, we're commission-oriented salespeople. You do not get to the top of a mountain without going through rough and difficult and winding and perilous paths. That's the facts of the matter. I had, I think, and developed the character to enable me to get to the approach anyway. We'll see where it ends up, the top of the mountain. But there is a line from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, wonderful book, but it said, say to yourself, if it is humanly possible, you can do it too. There are always hesitations and problems and difficulties and second guessing and all kinds of stuff. But the truth is, you don't get to the top of the mountain without going through rough and difficult paths. But following probably the greatest of the Roman emperors, if it is humanly possible, you can do it too. And I would suggest exactly the same thing to the audience. It requires difficulties, but if it's humanly possible, you can do it too.
That is solid.
There is something I'd like to mention to the group before we disappear. And you've been good enough not to ask the question about technology and AI and the future of the business. Is that a question you want me to address?
Yeah, I mean, I know, and the reason why I kind of like sat on the fence on that question is because like you're so strong in the classical stuff, but I mean, at the same time, like artificial intelligence, automation, like what are your thoughts on all this?
Well, I really won't address AI because the truth is it's pretty new and you never quite know where it's going to go at an early stage of development of practically anything. We can all think back of groovy new technology that didn't go anywhere and others that turned out to be quite useful. But there's a book that I'll refer you to by the ultimate techie, a fellow named Andrew Grove, who developed a firm called Intel and progressed. It's now the world's largest chip maker. And along the way, he ran into problems. The marketplace changed. Difficulties occurred. I mean, there were all kinds of problems there. And he made some reference to that specifically. He said in a wonderful book, great title, think about this, Only the Paranoid Survive. That's the title of the book. And he said, when a new piece of technology comes along, he said, people jump on it and they build it up and they hustle it and they work double time to make it seem larger and more significant, more overwhelming than it is. And then he said, mostly it turns out that it isn't quite what it's cracked up to be. I suggest that that's probably something that you ought to consider would be the proper way to put it. There are a few articles out on the cons of AI. I won't address them other than to say that Andrew Grove made the comment that people jump on it and they hype it and they hustle it and they build it up and they make it appear to be much larger than it actually should be. And maybe it is and maybe it isn't. But as Mr. Grove said, under the circumstances, you ought to be cautious. Easy, and then this addresses not what you've addressed, but the whole concept of automation and technology. Easy really is a wonderful marketing tool. You don't need to work to lose weight because you see, if you just take this pill or this patch, or this injection, it's going to work wonderfully for you. And you certainly don't need to exercise to build up muscles or get a six-pack because you see, you can just attach these to your body and the electrical currents will automatically tighten them up. And by the way, here's an interesting new idea that's just come up where you will never lose money in the market. Only gain, never lose. Well, easy is a great selling tool. And we see this to some degree in our industry. You don't need to work to develop these 3 different methodologies and record them and then do a 4th one with a different tone of voice to get those calls returned. You just do your magic digital email and all of a sudden the candidates will come swarming in. Or you just place the ads here, and here will be great candidates. Or you just kind of automatically place them right here, and by golly, clients will be beating down your doors because you're SEO, or you're got the magic email, or you've got the blogs, or good luck. There are a couple of things to be considered when you think about that. One of them is every idea, piece of technology, sourcing information is also available to your clients. The sourcing trainers, for the most part, figured out a long time ago that your clients would pay you more money, would pay them more money than you would for, who knows, the LinkedIn recruiting tools or the sourcing or how to put Boolean strings together or any of this kind of stuff. So you are basically competing with your clients and with every other person who takes the easy way out instead of learning serious skills to this business. The other side of it is, as you have probably noticed, we are an offshore world these days. There are a lot of technologically astute people in Sri Lanka and India and the Philippines and maybe Pakistan and any number of other areas, who knows, Vietnam, for goodness sakes, who really are pretty technologically astute at hunting around on the internet and actually speak pretty good English, and they will do their jobs for $3 an hour. Or $4 or $5 or $10. And you're not the only one who's getting stuff from them, as I am, saying, gee whiz, here is our MPC program from the Philippines that will help you, and it's only $600 a month, or whatever it may be. Or here is how our part-time recruiters in India will help you on this kind of stuff. The clients are getting it too. But what can't they do? Here's a rule. You shouldn't be doing anything that can be done equally well by someone who's paid less. And what we do for the clients is what they cannot do for themselves. And what can't they do for themselves? They can't be you. They can't be a skilled, brilliant, knowledgeable, top-flight recruiter with genuine, serious selling skills that you've developed over a period of time. You do that, and you really don't have to worry about things. One never knows what's going to happen in the next year. But you do know this. The possibility of either a recession or a cataclysmic event, whatever it might be, leading to a recession is not zero. I don't know what it is, but it's not zero. And that's true for the year after, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. And the answer to that is to develop the skills that you need on generating new clients, in particular, new clients that will help you through. And if people say, well, gee, I'm doing okay, Steve, here's a question. During the last year, what percentage of your business came from new clients? New clients, not repeat deals with existing clients, but people you'd never done business with before. You probably need the answer to that question. And once you take a look at it and look at the whole panoply of skills that are involved in this business, the only way out to become not only successful in the sense of making money, but really fun and enjoyable and interesting, and to be an artist in this business, comes from learning the business thoroughly. It'll take you some time, but I strongly suggest it's absolutely worth it.
Man, Steve, this has been a phenomenal interview. Before I let you go, first of all, how can people get a hold of you?
Nothing complex. My website is Steve Finkel. Remembering my last name is Finkel, and it's Steve. And overseas, they call me Steven, but here it is Steve Finkel, no space, no dot, just Steve Finkel, .com. And the email address is just stevefinkel@mindspring.com. There is, up on my website, there's phone number and emails and stuff like that as well.
Cool. And is there anything else you'd love to share before I let you go?
Well, you have not asked the question about the differences between the books.
Oh, yes. Okay. So you got,
Right.
before I let you go, you have 4 books out.
I do. And they're all different, as are the audios. And some of this transfers over from a management standpoint. The foundational book for the industry for new people is Search and Placement, a Handbook for Success by Larry Nobles and Steve Finkel. And I'll suggest something to any manager listening. You're a good example of this. The biggest problem any manager has is figuring out who's serious about working to learn this business and who isn't. Uh, Now you'll find out after a month, 2 months, 6 months, when you have turnover, how many people started with you in your firm that aren't there anymore. A lot, right? And that costs the manager. I mean, it cost him finances, it cost him emotion, it cost him all kinds of things. There is a way to greatly improve the selection process and reduce turnover. If a manager will give a person before, I repeat this, before an offer is extended, the book Search and Placement, a Handbook for Success by Steve Finkel and Larry Nobles. It's a complete overview of the business. It's not everything, but it's everything from organization to close to developing repeat business, and say, look, I want you to read this book. I want you to underline it. I want you to highlight it, and then come back and we'll talk about it before an offer is extended. And if he doesn't do it, don't hire him. Right? I had a manager, my first manager had been regional sales manager with National Cash Register, supervised probably 100 salespeople through sub-managers. People would come to him and he would say, look, I want to be a manager. And he'd go, okay, fine. Here's a book. It was called The First Time Sales Manager. And it's a pretty good book. And he said, I want you to read this book, The First Time Sales Manager. Then come back to me and we'll talk about it. He had stacks of these books. He swore to me that in 90%, he was not exaggerating, 90% of the situations, he never heard from these people again. I mean, they were out there selling to their sub-manager, but they never came to him, the regional manager, never heard from him again. Now, look, what would the likelihood be of someone being successful in this business if being given a book and saying, here's about this business, I want you to read it, underline it, highlight it, we'll talk about it, and he didn't do it? How were his chances? Now, that's not the right book for Benjamin Mena to read. At some point, it is, because there is a lot there, but it's certainly not where you should start. The book, Unlimited Clients, Perfect Prospecting for Today's Recruiter, is the foundation of doing well for an experienced person and to getting what it says, new prospects, new clients that will help you to get through any difficulties that might occur. We don't like to think about it, but there is an element of luck in this business. It evens out over a period of time, but there is. I was once sitting with a brand new person on a desk, and his third call, I had gone through training. Fortunately, he worked for me. I had gone through training. I'd gone through role playing. Now he was going to pick up the phone, call up prospecting. His third call in the business, he picked up an account that generated $300,000 in production his first year. And the next year, he generated $400,000 with that single account. And as I say, fortunately, he was working for me. But you know what happened? The company was acquired by someone else. They quit hiring from him, and he's not in business anymore because he had never developed the skills to generate new accounts and new business. He got lucky. And all I can say is I wish it had been me, but it was him. But yet he wasn't there. When you first started in business, Benjamin, were there people that became successful early?
There were a lot of people that became successful early. I was super slow out of the gate, banging my head against the wall. But the funny thing is, and I've had this conversation with other recruiting friends, like the people that were gangbusters out of the gate, they're not recruiters anymore.
Right. Because they thought they were terrific early. And if they had continued being lucky, they might have turned into trainers. You know, it's Unlimited Clients is a specific book, not only on, I mentioned this earlier, marketing the candidate, that's part of it, of course, but the majority is prospecting and getting new accounts. That's what people need to focus on because they're the ones that pay the bills. Thirdly, real recruiting is actually composed of 3 different sections. One of them is orienting the client to work with you properly so that he proceeds quickly, extends good offers, gives you the proper feedback. This is a section, and selecting the assignment on which to recruit as well. A lot of people feel, I already know how to select the assignment properly. I'll suggest to you they don't to the level of sophistication and orienting the client to move quickly and extend fair offers that you'll get in the first third. The center third of real recruiting is identifying candidates unrelated to social media and the internet. And the third part of it are the real specifics of the segments of the actual recruiting call. And when you put all these segments together, there's a portion about, okay, we hit this segment, this segment, this segment, this segment. Let's put it all together for you and feel the rhythm, feel the singing of it, feel the way it rings. And you put the call together into a beautiful, cohesive whole segment, and then it blocks up all together. And finally, the fourth one is the book that you've got, Breakthrough. There it is right there, Breakthrough 2.0. It is basically, it's a little different. It's not a cohesive, here's how you get new accounts. Here's how you find and recruit candidates. It's pretty much 35 essays that start off with, okay, you are the world's best recruiter. I acknowledge that. No problem. You are. But don't tell me you're perfect. I've spent my life doing in-house training with the best recruiters in the country, in the whole world. And here are the areas where they can improve. And maybe you can too. And that's what it is. It's 350 pages, actually, of 30 different sections on how experienced recruiters can improve. You immerse yourself in them one by one if you're an experienced person, and then later on, you walk through the mist of the books or the audios.
That's phenomenal. Well, Steve, I just want to say thank you so much for jumping on this podcast. And mostly it's, I came across you because other high producers actually were talking about you. You've been a staple in the industry, and so many top billers, so many firm owners have mentioned you as one of the reasons why they're successful. So I want to say thank you for coming on and sharing. And for the listeners, I know that this podcast interview definitely leveled you up. So I'm so excited that you got to listen to this. Thank you, guys.
It's a terrific business, and you are in the right place at the right time.
Awesome. And let's crush 2024 and grow together, guys. Thank you.